Hello, so what we're going to do today is write a little dice simulator that generates random numbers, like the rolls of a die. And, say you roll 5 dice, we're going to check to see if they're all the same value. And if they are, great, we're going to stop rolling. Otherwise, we're going to re-roll, hoping to get all the values to be the same. So we're actually going to implement this as a class, rather than just write, straight procedural programming to do it. So the way we want it to work is something like, let me pop open Notepad, get rid of that. That gives us some of the answer. So the first, let's ask how many dice to roll. I'm going to say 5. And then how many sides per die? 6. 6-sided dice, cubes. That's the normal kind of die. But if you're a Pathfinder, Dungeons and Dragons player, you're used to rolling 20-sided dice, or whatever, 4-sided dice, 8-sided dice. There are other kind of dice, polyhedrons, tetrahedrons, icosahedrons, dodecahedrons, whatever. So it's going to do that, and then it's going to roll. I rolled a 1, 2, 5, something like that, and it's going to go, okay, well, do I have any matches in there? No. I better re-roll them all again, and it rolls a 6 and a 5 and a 3 and a 2 and a, well, it can't roll a 7 on a 6-sided die. Yet again, I managed to, okay. So then, yeah, we do have 2 matches. So we're going to want to re-roll everything else, and maybe the next time we, get that, and it goes great. We've got 3 matches. And then we roll it a 4th time, and today, and ta-da, they're all matched like that. Now what I would recommend that we do is that we sort the dice so that we can tell that, find the matches very easily. How do we find the matches once they're sorted? We just check, keep looking for them in a straight row. So we'll probably wind up sorting them because, if we had this, but then they were rearranged in this order, 6, 6, 5, 3, 2, it'd be pretty easy to spot which ones matched, which ones didn't. So what kind of data are we going to need in our class? We're going to need an array of ints allocated out to the number of dice, We will need some kind of roll function that will roll the dice. We're coming up with all the methods and the members of our DiceGame class. We'll have an array of ints. We'll have a roll function that, generates random numbers to fill the array. I expect we're going to probably want a sort method that will sort our dice. We may want a, which number most duplicated. And in this case, it would say that 6 was the most duplicated. If this had been 6, 6, 4, 4, 4, it would say that 4 was the most duplicated. Why do you want to do that? So that when you re-roll, you could only re-roll all the dice that don't match 6. So then we're going to need a re-roll function where we pass in the number that we want all the other ones to match. Or we're going to re-roll, and none of them, if the die does not match the number that we specified, then that array value is going to be re-rolled. Hope that makes sense. And we need something that will check to see if they're all the same, right? Do they all match? Are they all equal? Match. Okay. Like that. Which will return true if every number is the same. This sounds like it's going to be a bool. I don't know that this needs to return anything. This is going to return the value of the one that occurs most commonly. And if they're all the same, then it may just return the largest of them, right? Because then you're going to start re-rolling and hope for the largest value. Sort I don't think it needs to return anything. Roll, I don't think it needs to return anything. And that's our data value. So that's kind of what our class needs to look like. Let's see if we can get all this done in about 45 minutes or so. So I'm going to make a new project. And so we're going to put our, our prompts and things like that in order to ask for the number of dice and the number of sides over here in main. And then we're going to have a dice class that we use inside of a separate file. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and add into our console application a new class, a new item. It's going to be a class. Let's call it, for lack of a better term, DiceGame. And we'll come back to that one. We're just going to kind of flesh out, slowly but surely, what we want this one really to be able to do. So over here in main, we need to ask for the number of dice, ask for the sides of the dice, then we will implement our game object, and we could just use a while true for lack of a better, structure. Initialize, well, nope, let's initialize, implement our, declare and instantiate, our dice game object. Then we're going to need to initialize our dice. I don't know if we had that listed here. Yeah, initialize needs to set up that array, huh? So we're going to need an initialize method. Maybe we could make a constructor that took the sides of the dice and the number of the dice. That sounds like a cooler idea than an initialize to me. So why don't we make a constructor called DiceGame that takes the number of dice and the number of sides per die, and that'll be our constructor. So that way we don't have to instantiate and then initialize. So we will declare and instantiate our dice game object, and then while true, we will roll, game.roll. Bring this back up so we have an idea of all the event methods that we came up with. We will sort. Maybe sort doesn't even have to be called, Maybe that could be done by the roll function. Probably so. The user may wonder, the other programmer may wonder why we have to call the sort before we do anything else. So probably sort ought to be built into the roll function, but the roll method. I'm going to leave that there for now. Once we've rolled it, we need to find out if they all match. If all match, print a success message. Maybe we ought to be keeping track of the number of times that we've rolled. So we might want to declare a variable and increment it each time, that kind of thing. And then we'll break out of our loop. But if they're not all matching, then we need to find the most common die among our series, the number that's most repeated. Get most repeated. And then we want to re-roll based on the most repeated value. Now, I see a flaw in our logic here, which is that we have a roll here, and then we have a re-roll here. So we probably should roll before we even get into the loop, right? We can roll our dice for the first time, kind of a priming, called a priming read if you're reading data from a file or user input or whatever, but instead so we're going to prime our array by doing the roll, and then we're going to sort the dice, And if they all match, we print a success message. Otherwise, we get the most repeated and we re-roll them. Right now, we're just coming up with pseudocode. Why don't we also declare, a counter? And then each time we re-roll, we increment that counter. That could also be actually part of the DiceGame, class itself. There. I think that's an okay pseudocode for what we want to do. Alright, so we're quite ready to do this stuff. Ask for the number of dice, ask for the number of sides of dice. So console.write how many dice to roll, and then we're also going to ask them how many sides per die. Obviously, we need to get the input in between those. So string s is equal to console.input. Well, that's not right. So console.readline guess we could call this snum for the number of dice, and then string s sides for the sides per die. So after we ask how many sides per die, console.readline. Now we better try parse and convert them. So bool BOK1, BOK2. BOK1 is equal to, and we're going to do our try parse. So what's our syntax for our try parse? I'll cheat and look it up. So here we go. Int dot try parse our input followed by our output variable, except our input isn't just s, it's number of dice, and we forgot to declare an integer version of that. So we better declare our two ints as well. Why did I say I out? Anyways, so number underscore of dice, or just num dice would suffice, huh? And then the number of sides. So BOK1 is equal to int.tryparse snum out number of dice. Let's do the same thing for the number of sides. BOK2 is equal to int.tryparse s sides, comma, out num underscore sides. And if either one of those failed, let's just print an error message and return. So if not BOK1 or not BOK2, if either one of them is bad, console.writeLine. This is a good way to handle it. Not really. We ought to make them loop and stuff like that. But anyways, console.writeLine, invalid, non-numeric input, quitting. And then we'll just return. From that point on, we can assume that we're good to go. So at that point, we want to declare and instantiate our DiceGame object. Now we don't even have a DiceGame class, but DiceGame game is equal to new DiceGame, and into our constructor we want to pass the number of dice, num underscore dice, comma, and the number of sides. Now let's go ahead and actually start our DiceGame class now that we have that. Here's all of our code so far. This is all inside main. And of course it's yelling that we don't have a DiceGame class, so we will go ahead and do that. Oh, I think we made the DiceGame class. We just have not added a constructor for it. So we're going to come over here and put a constructor in our DiceGame class. Public DiceGame, it takes two ints. Number of dice and number of sides. Our class also needs an array of dice. So private int, guess we're just going to call it dice. But now we're going to have to allocate it. Oh, I forgot to declare the data type here. Alright guys, I made a goof. Didn't record about 10 minutes worth of lecture, so I've undone those changes pretty much, and we're back to where we are, I think. So we have our constructor here. I deleted everything in it. What do we need as instance members? I think that we ought to keep both the dice array itself, the number of dice and the number of sides. So int num underscore dice, int underscore num underscore sides. So let's set those. This dot num dice is equal to dice. This dot num underscore sides is equal to, well, there I did it again. Not num dice is equal to dice. This dot num dice is equal to num underscore dice. This num sides is equal to num underscore sides. And let's allocate our array. Dice equals new int out to the number of dice, like that. All right. So we have set our three instance members at this point. I may as well make them all private. Now we need a couple of methods. We're going to need a random object so that we can actually roll the dice. So random R&D is equal to new random. And let's make a method called roll, which will just roll one die, generate a random value. So public, it needs to return an int because that's values that our dice are, they're whole numbers. Public int roll. It's going to use our random number generator. So return R&D dot next from 0 up to the number of sides plus 1. Because this would generate between, like, if we have 6 sides, 0 to 5, so we need to make it 1 to 6. Now we need a method that will roll them all. Public, but it doesn't need to return anything. So roll dice. This is actually a private one, isn't it? Because it's only used inside this class. So I'm going to turn that to private. So roll dice, what does it need to do? It needs to iterate through our dice array, calling the roll function on each one. So let's just use an index-based for I is equal to 0, I is less than num dice, I plus plus, or we could use the length of the array. That would actually be, you know, more canonical here. Dice dot length. And then dice subscript I is equal to a roll of the dice. There we go. That will fill up our entire array full of random numbers. We're going to need a print in order to print our dice out in a nice, pretty fashion. So, public void print dice for each int value in the dice array, for int value in dice, console.writeLine, or just console.write, actually, we don't want to go to the next line for every die. The value plus a space, and then at the end of all the dice we want to go to the next line, so console.writeLine. Okay, so we've added 3 methods now. There's our constructor. Those are our instance variables. We've added a roll method. We've added roll dice. We've added print dice, and now we need one more method to see if they all match. Now the way I'm going to check to see if they all match is I'm going to take the first value, the first element in the array, and then I'm going to compare all the elements in the array to see if they match. And if we ever find something that doesn't match, we're going to return a false because they don't match. If we make it through the end of the array without that happening, then we know they do match. So public void, do they match? What's a good function name for this, Kathleen? Match dice.
Match.
Yeah. But it's a Boolean. So public bool match. We need to get the first value, the value to match. Okay, I'm really not liking doing that. Okay, I'm going to call that one target. Is equal to the first value in the array. Now let's iterate through the array with a for each loop looking for them all. For each int value in the dice array, for each int value in dice, if target equals value, if target not equals value, it's a problem. We're going to return false. If we get all the way through the end of the for loop and we never hit a false, then we know that they all match and we're going to return a true. Alrighty, I think we're ready to go back and implement this inside program.cs. So I'm going to go back to main. We need to declare and instantiate our DiceGame object. I think I already had this, so you're probably not going to have to type it again. DiceGame, game equals new DiceGame, and I want to pass in the number of dice and the number of sides. So num underscore dice, num underscore sides. Use our constructor. Now our order of logic we decided is that we were going to roll, and then we were going to increment our counter, and then if they all match, we're going to print a success message. Now I've kind of come to the conclusion that we may not need a sort method for this. I think we would need a sort method if we were going to be searching for straights, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, where they were all in sequence. So let's set our counter. Int counter is equal to 1. Let's roll our dice. Game.roll dice. And then while game.match parentheses in parentheses is equal to false. No, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to stick to my old tried and true logic. It's too burned into my head. While true, let's check this. Let's print out our roll. Console.write roll placeholder 0, curly brace 0, colon, space, end quote, comma, our current counter. That way we can say roll 1, roll 2, roll 3, and so forth. Now let's actually print our roll. So game.print the dice. Do I need to zoom in a little bit? Alrighty. Now we need to see if they match. If game.match, parentheses in parentheses, the dice all match. If that's true, and I really don't need that equal true, do I? Then we're going to print a success message. Console.writeLine, congrats, they all match. And then let's break. That not being the case, and we could put it inside an else, but there's no reason to because the break takes care of that, then we need to add 1 to our counter. Counter plus plus, and we need to re-roll. Game.roll. Now we actually haven't implemented some of the logic that I wanted to implement here. Excuse me, roll dice. Game.roll dice. And what I've not implemented is the ability to figure out which die, occurred the most often. We had the most 6s in it, and then re-roll only the ones that didn't match 6. So maybe we can do that without it taking too much time. But I want to make sure that this works. I don't have my console read key at the bottom. Console.read key. Give it a shot, let it go. How many dice to roll? 3 dice. How many sides per die? 6. Wow, that was pretty fast. It only took 15 rolls to get them to match. Maybe that's normal. Run it again, find out. 3 dice, 6 sides per die. Took 30 rolls that time. Do it once more. I'm going to roll 3 dice, but they're going to be 20-siders. I'm a Dungeons & Dragons player. Takes a long time, 1,000 rolls, but we finally... Now there's something odd here. The last 2 times I've watched it go, the winning roll was the highest value that the die could generate. Is that consistent? Roll 2 dice that are 20-siders. Nope, okay, that was just pure chance. That bugged me. Okay, so the last part of it is actually the most complicated, relatively, compared to the rest of these. We need to scan the dice array to find out which number occurs the most often. And the way we do that is we create a little histogram. A histogram keeps track of how many 1s were rolled, how many 2s were rolled, how many 3s were rolled, and so on. So that histogram is going to be an array of ints. So, and we're not going to actually call this from outside of DiceGame. So private int square braces histogram, parentheses in parentheses. Let's allocate it first, but we're not going to allocate it to the number of dice. We're going to allocate it to the number of sides because we're counting, how many 1s we found, how many 2s we found, how many 3s we found, and so on. And we need to make it 1 larger than the number of dice. Excuse me, the number of sides, because if it's a 6-sided dice, we actually need to be able to say elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's going to be ignoring element 0, but I don't feel like subtracting 1 all the time. So int hist is equal to new int out to the number of sides plus 1. If you need to pause and Google up what a histogram is, please do so. By the time we're done, this array will, the number of 3s. Let's give a demonstration. If we have this dice roll, 3, 4, 5, 5, 5. We want our array to look like this. Our histogram array is going to look like this. It's not going to have rolled any 0s, so the first element is going to be 0. How many 1s did it roll? And let's throw in a 1 in there. Let's throw in 2 1s. How many 1s did it roll? It rolled 2 1s. How many 2s did it roll? 0. How many 3s did it roll? 1. How many 4s did it roll? 1. How many 5s did it roll? 3. That makes sense? Hope that makes sense. So that's what we're going for. So we need a little loop. For value, or for each, parentheses int value in dice, histogram at that value plus plus. And then we could return our histogram array. Now, haven't we in the past done something that would go through an array finding the largest value?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do next. We have to find the largest value in that histogram. And this stuff could probably better go into another class entirely because, but anyways, we're just going to leave it all here. Private int largest value. Which is actually equal to the most rolled. But we need to pass in an array of ints, which is our histogram array. So the first thing we need to do is actually to call our histogram method. So int square brackets hist is equal to new, nope, let's call our function, is equal to histogram. That. And then we need to search from 1 all the way up to the number of sides plus 1, figuring out which value was highest. So we can do that. Int the largest is currently equal to histogram value 0. First value in the array. And then for each parentheses int value in the histogram, if the largest value is less than that value, if largest less than value, then that becomes the largest. And then we want to return the largest value we found. I have declared my array incorrectly, haven't I? That's Java style. I need to move those square braces. Oh, no, that's not true. A local variable named hist cannot be declared in the scope. It would give a different meaning to hist, which is already used as a parent to denote something else. Really? Since when? Where have I declared hist?
We used hist and histogram.
Yeah, but that's in a... Oh! Look at that. We don't want to be passing in an array there. It's the parameter that's causing a problem. All right, so those are our two functions. Here's the histogram function. And here's the one that extracts the value with the largest occurrence, most commonly occurring value in our dice array. And I hope that I have a closing brace there. Okay. Let's put a comment here. What is this doing? Return the value that occurs most commonly, most often in the dice array. And this one, return a histogram array showing the frequency of each number in the dice array. Alrighty, we're actually 9/10 of the way there. I'd like to make this one public though, I've decided, just so that we could include that in our printing. So I've made largest value public.
I've got an error and I'm not quite sure what it means.
All right, just a sec, guys. Can't get any more on the screen than that. Anyways, I'm just going to scroll down there and pause the recording. Alrighty. You know, we've written a lot of stuff, but we haven't tested it out. Let's go back to main and call largest value after we print out the number of dice, and we can see if that's the one that we actually rolled the most. So we print our dice here. Let's get the largest, the value that was most rolled. So most rolled equals game dot. Largest value is a bad term for this specifically. As a generic term, you know, for searching an array and finding the largest value, it's great, but it's not a good one for this. We may wind up renaming that. In fact, I want to do that right now. We're going to go back to DiceGame, and I'm going to change largest value to most underscore rolled. And I seem to be mixing my my nomenclature here of underscores and upper and lowercase letters. So most capital R rolled. Then I can come back up here and say int most is equal to game dot most rolled, parentheses in parentheses, and let's print that out as well. As a matter of fact, well, I wish it was going to be on the same line as the dice themselves, honestly, but that would require us doing, you know, I'm going to cut that game.print dice and put it down below the most rolled call because I want to add an extra little bit of printing. So there, I moved it down there. We get the most rolled, and let's write it out. Console.write space space most rolled curly brace 0 curly brace space space, or yeah, most rolled colon placeholder 0 space comma most, like that. And then we should get our dice print out. I'm not sure that's going to look very good, but let's give that a shot. We can tweak it later. How many dice to roll? 3. How many sides per die? 6. Okay, yeah, we need a little bit more space there before we actually start printing out the dice, right? And that's not working. My little histogram is off. I'm going to have to think about that, but I want to fix that printing problem first. So most rolled, like that. Maybe that's excessive. How many dice to roll? 4. How many sides per dice? 6. All right. Now, if that was accurate, it's actually, what it's returning is the number of matches. We have 4 matches here. We have 2 matches here. And the reason for that is because I'm returning the highest value, but I'm not returning the index number, which indicates which value it was. Because if you recall, I said that the histogram was going to be set up so that, you know, position 1 equaled the number of times that 1 was rolled. Position 2 equaled the number of times that 2 was rolled, and so on. So we're going to have to add a little something to our most rolled method. So go back to dice games, and along with largest, we need to put, whoopsie, I need to cancel this because it thinks I can't make changes while I'm running. Int index, or large index. Right now it's equal to 0. But every time we find a new value, we want to set the index equal. And if I'm going to do that, I can no longer use a for each loop. All right, guys, I'm going to delete the entire loop. I'm deleting everything down from there. Int histogram, int largest, int index is equal to 0. Now for int I is equal to 0, I is less than num sides, or the length of the array, hist dot capital L length I plus plus, Num sides would have been a bad choice. No, yeah, it would have been because I won't even explain why. Because this array is not the same length as the number of dice, right? We may be rolling, a 10-sided die, but have 100 dice in it. The histogram's only going to have 10 elements in it, or 11 if you count that useless one at position 0. So anyways, if parentheses dice at position I, nope, not dice, if parentheses histogram position I is greater than our largest value, curly brace, largest becomes that value, largest equals histogram at I, and then index equals I, and then down here underneath our for loop, we're going to return the index. Let's run it again to see if that actually worked. I want to roll 5 dice or 6-siders. There we go. Here we go. 6 was rolled the most often there. 5 was rolled the most often there. Sure, a lot of times when 1 was rolled the most often, but it seems to be the case. If they're all the same, it's just going to be the first value. That may have been a good reason to sort the array, so that the first value, yeah, let's just sort the array, huh? Hey, Kathleen, do you remember the syntax for sorting an array? Or should I Google it real fast?
Oh, jeez. Isn't it just like array.sort?
I think so. Okay, so after we roll our dice, I feel like sorting our array. So I'm going to scroll up here to that, and then array.sort parentheses our dice array. Now when I run it, it'll be prettier. I have 5 dice or 6 sides. They're in the wrong order. I'd like for them to be sorted by inverse. Spending a lot of time on this portion.
If you want it inverse, I think it's array.reverse.
Yeah, can we just reverse the array? Array.reverse parentheses dice. Once more. 5 dice, 6 sides. Well, it's still not picking the highest value, but not in every case anyways. 3 is the highest value, 6 is the highest value, but when you have 2 of one kind and 2 of another, it doesn't pick up that that one was the highest. I guess I don't care. I'm not going to spend any more time on that. So the last thing we need is a reroll, where it rerolls every die in the array, but unless it matches the value that was passed in, right? So if 3 is our magic number, because we rolled more 3s than everything else, we want to reroll all the dice that do not match a 3. So let's do one that does that. Public void reroll dice int match, that's the value. Anything that already matches that, we're not going to bother re-rolling again. So it's going to look a lot like this. We could probably even just copy that code. For parentheses int I is equal to 0, I is less than dice dot length, I plus plus. If dice subscript I does not equal the value that we're looking for, then we're going to re-roll it. Dice subscript I is equal to that roll. Then we can sort them and reverse them again. Array dot sort array dot reverse. We need to go back to main. Oh, got to pass in the die, the array. Array dot sort dice, array dot reverse dice. We need to go back to main, and our roll, our call to the roll method down at the bottom of our loop needs to be changed to reroll. So go to the bottom of our loop, and where it says roll dice after the counter plus plus, we're going to make that game dot reroll dice. Reroll dice. Parentheses in parentheses. What we will find, besides the fact that I've got a mistake here, oh, what value we're looking for, which is the most common die value. So re-roll the dice, looking for that value. That's the value that we're looking for. Not really liking just calling that most. I think it would have been clearer if we called it something else, but I don't feel like changing everything. All right, we will find now that it takes a lot less time, because now we are only rolling the dice that we need to. We're not just, redoing the entire hand of dice every time. Because if we have 4 ones, we don't need to re-roll all those ones just to see. Okay, so anyways, 5 dice, 6. See, that did not take long at all. But we had a good first roll. The first time we rolled, we already had 3 matching. Let's run it again. How many dice to roll? 5. How many sides per die? 6. Suspicious. Don't like it when the same thing happens 2 times in a row. Okay, so it took 19 times to get them all to match. But you can see the first roll we had more ones than anything else. So those are the dice that we preserved, and we only re-rolled the dice that did not match that value. So pretty quickly. If you remember, it took thousands of tries to get 5 or 6 matches. What if we want to roll 5 20-sided dice? And we're actually done with the lesson at this point. So we have 5 dice. Each one has 20 sides. Only took 28 times. Pretty neat. What if you have 100 dice? And they only have 2 sides, like pennies, heads or tails. How long would it take to flip them all until
6?
It only took 6 times? That's pretty amazing. Don't know if I trust it, but okay. I'm going to say that it's working. It looked like it was working to me. That last result looked a little bit odd, but I'm happy enough with it. How many dice to roll? I want to see that one more time. 5 dice, 6 sides per roll, just like the game of Yahtzee. This seems to be indicating that you can get a Yahtzee in 5 rolls no matter what. But the game itself, if you've ever played the dice game, only lets you have 3. You only have 3 rolls. So they set it up to where, statistically it's uncommon for you to get it. That one took 13 times. Obviously, we weren't nearly as lucky. Okay, I hope that was interesting. We used a class. Now, the last homework for the semester is going to be to take this program and to make it also support straights. So I'm going to include this code out in the assignment, or something very similar to it, something that's a little bit better documented. But you can use this code as your basis. You can use your own code, or you can use the code that's actually going to be cut and pasted into the assignment. And so that'll be the last one of the semester, I believe. One little note, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, is that homework 11 said that it was the DICE program, but it wasn't. It was actually a class to write called Animal. So let's go look at that homework assignment, and I'm going to have to make a new box for the last one, which which is a continuation of what we just did here. But here's the animal assignment. Create a class called animal with the following members: species, kingdom, how many eyes, how many teeth, and how many feathers it has. For example, you could have a crow that was a bird. He's got 2 eyes, 0 teeth, and 100 feathers. And make a public property that exposes the kingdom field. And we've done properties in a lecture or two. You can look them up if you haven't. So we have a property named kind, which is a string, and it exposes the kingdom field. Its set method should make sure the value set is not empty. So you can't set the kind to an empty value. So it needs 3 methods. It needs a constructor, a default constructor. It needs a constructor that allows us to specify all 5 of those things. And then it needs a display method. And then go on from here. Your main program will create a zoo of animals. You'll create 5 animals, different kinds, and then go through the array displaying each one. So for extra credit, make it do data entry. Otherwise, you can just hard code the values. More extra credit if you add properties to support all the fields, not just the kingdom field. Find animals. Okay, honestly, I don't know why we need a find animals method. Yeah, that just seemed to come out of the blue. I'm going to delete that entire section. Oh, that's it. A static method, comma, find. Oh, come back here. I need to modify the Word doc, obviously. So in the instructions here, it says to add a static method that will search the array for everything that matches a specified type. You can generalize it so it doesn't just search for bird, and then have your code. So add a static method, parentheses, find animals, that will search the array of animals for all animals with that matching kind. And then add a static method to your main class that will display all the animals. So those are our 2 ones, display animals and find animals. All right, does that make sense?
Yeah, I looked at it earlier today.
Okay.
I knew it all.
Alrighty.
Edited it.
All right. So we have 2 pieces of homework due before the end of the semester. I think we ought to be able to do that because the end of the semester is, in fact, like the 17th or the 18th and the 19th. No, that really is only 2 weeks, isn't it? I'd rather you do the animal assignment than the dice assignment, so I'm going to make the dice assignment extra credit. This one is more pertinent to programming with classes. because you're creating your own class rather than modifying one that I gave you. So I'm going to post a dice assignment, but it's bonus. Alrighty, see y'all next week.